the mission commander. This is pilot Andy Mogensen's second trip to space station. His first was as the flight engineer for the ESA IRIS mission in 2015. Mission specialist Satoshi Furukawa's interest in space began when he was 5 years old and he saw the Apollo 11 moon landing on TV. And mission specialist Konstantin Borisov was selected to be a cosmonaut in 2018, and this will be his first trip to space. We've got more than 10,000 people all gathered, including these folks. Some special students. Those kids are, I should call them kids, they're students, right? College students. They're part of the First Nations launch, and they're giving us a big wave from the Banana Creek viewing location. They're from the University of Washington, University of Colorado, and Queen's University. They're visiting as part of NASA's First Nations launch, an Artemis Student Challenge, where they design, build, and launch their own high-powered rockets. And those students that you saw there in the stands, they were the grand prize winners. So welcome and enjoy the launch. T-minus 14 minutes and counting. Awaiting Crew-7 are 7 crew members at their destination at the International Space Station. I caught up with 3 of them as they were zipping around the Earth.
Hey, Daryl, good morning.
Well, good morning to you, Frank, Stephen, and Woody. Okay, minutes away from liftoff. You're inside the spacecraft. What's it like?
The rocket is a living, breathing machine. We fuel the Falcon 9 rocket on the pad while the crew is on board. I expected that my heart would be racing, but actually it was just so much like training that I felt quite calm.
Well, I'm sure calm will give way to excitement, right, when Crew-7 comes aboard. What do you think that'll be like?
More than anything, it's your friends coming up to station, right? And so you get to hug and greet your friends that you haven't seen for several months. And it's always just a really fun reunion.
You know, they're coming on board. They're going to live on board. It's really exciting to greet them as new friends and crewmates.
Well, those new friends and crewmates, will you have any advice for them when they come on board, like things to do, things not to do?
The awesome thing is that we have an amazing ground team that catches all of it and keeps us honest and keeps us out of trouble. And so you can just kind of relax and enjoy it and just allow yourself to take it in, because it really is a pretty special experience.
Really enjoy your time up here with the people, with the environment, and with the opportunity to work up here and look at the Earth. It's really amazing. Just really enjoy it.
All right, speaking of enjoyment, do you have a fun way to confirm that you're in space, something you can do? You want to give that move a score, Jessica?
I don't know. It required assistance from 2 crew members, so I don't know. I'll give it an 8.5.
Okay, that was very kind. All right, well, before the Crew-7 got into their spacecraft, they got a picture with the Falcon 9 booster that will take them up into space. And there they are on the business end of those 9 Merlin engines. Once we leave planet Earth, these fine folks at Johnson Space Center will take over.
Dragon
This is mission
SpaceX.
control.
We are still continuing to assess that sensor and proceeding with the count.
Okay, so as you heard, they're
SpaceX Dragon copies, continuing with the count while the tubes assess.
still working the sensor, but at the same time continuing to load the propellants on board Falcon. So Jessica, as we count down these last few minutes, you've got the launch team. They're taking a look at a sensor and some of the readings there. At the same time, we're proceeding forward, and they're communicating with the astronauts inside. And so as we get down to these final minutes, any thoughts?
This is an exciting time for the crew. You know, they're probably running through some checklists of their own right now. They may be pretty busy in there, going through those same things that they've done in their simulations so many times before. But I bet it's getting pretty real right now, and hearing those calls about the sensor probably raises a few questions as well, but I know the ground will keep them informed as we go. 10 minutes, it's getting very close.
Indeed it is. And tracking everything are Leah and Ronnie at SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. Will take us through the rest of the count.
Thanks, Daryl. Our next major countdown event will be at the T-minus 10-minute mark, so coming up here,
And
when the
Dragon
Falcon 9
SpaceX,
launch
stand by for display configuration.
There we go ahead and have the Dragon astronauts are standing by for display configuration, which will let them know that we are even closer to liftoff. The launch commit criteria that we're waiting to hear that call out for are specific thresholds and pieces of information about the entire Falcon 9 system needed to make sure that the rocket is healthy. Of course, we do have many systems in place to ensure that the rocket and crew are both safe leading up to liftoff and during flight.
Coming up on 9 minutes until liftoff today, which is also about the same amount of time it takes to get to orbit, a 9-minute ride. That's about the time we'll see second stage cutoff. A few minutes after that is when we'll see Crew Dragon separate from the second stage. And we'll be listening to some performance calls as we get into the final countdown, of course, and then after liftoff. On the ground, you'll hear SpaceX flight controllers reporting on trajectory, speed, booster performance, and other key milestones. But there are some other calls you'll hear the crew make also after liftoff. These are different abort zones. They come in the form of different number and letter combinations. And these are throughout the flight up the eastern seaboard. So the first two are 1A and 1B. They have that name because they're in the first stage. That lasts until they're up to the very north of North Carolina. And the next are 2A through 2E. Those come into play when the second stage is powering Dragon. That takes us from the top of North Carolina all the way to the tip of Newfoundland in the northern Atlantic. Now, a little bit different from the other naming system, you'll hear the call Shannon, which refers to Shannon, Ireland, meaning they would target off the coast of Ireland if they were later in that second stage and needed to abort. You'll hear those different calls throughout the flight uphill, along with key performance callouts from the guidance, navigation, and control officer, as well as the propulsion lead.
One of the next callouts that we're listening for is the announcement that Stage 1 engine chill has started. Right now, the propellant in the tanks is isolated from the engines, but at T-minus 7 minutes, we'll open up the engine pre-valves and start passing just a trickle of liquid oxygen through the Merlin engine pumps, chilling the engines for the start sequence. We do this because the super chilled and densified liquid oxygen is really cold, and we use that small amount of LOX to basically prepare the engine hardware. There's the call out for engine chill. So now we're basically preparing that engine hardware to flow all of the LOX and propellant into it during flight. Next up, we should hear the call out for Stage 1 RP1 load completion.
And Dragon SpaceX, stand by for final go, but please confirm crew displays are configured for launch.
SpaceX Dragon, crew displays are configured for launch.
All right, we heard their crew displays. Those 3 screens from which they can monitor the mission are configured for launch.
Stage 1, RP1 load is complete.
And confirmation that RP1, the densified kerosene or the rocket fuel that propels the crew into orbit, loading is complete on the first stage. We did hear the second stage was completed a short time ago as well. Now T-minus 6 minutes until launch. We are still loading liquid oxygen on the first and second stages. This is the oxidizer we need to combine with the densified kerosene that just finished loading. Coming up, we will hear the call for Dragon to configure for terminal count and then transition to internal power. at about 5 minutes until launch. Then we'll hear the propellant tanks on Falcon 9 are getting ready to pressurize, adding some additional rigidity and structural support as we get ready for the strong back to retract. It'll move just a couple of degrees at first, and then we'll see it swing open completely at the moment of liftoff. That strong back provides access to Falcon 9's fueling lines and umbilicals for the prop load and the different gases being loaded on board. So we're continuing to check through a couple of more fueling milestones, including one around the 2-minute mark, where we will hear that the liquid oxygen is finished on board the second stage.
Dragon is configured for terminal count, and Dragon's on internal power. Falcon tanks are pressurizing for strong back recheck.
So there we heard the call out that we are preparing for strong back retract. And as Leah just mentioned, the strong back is that white truss structure that you see on the left side of Falcon 9. Got a better shot of it right there.
Strong back is retracting.
Just before lift. There we heard the call out from Mission Control that we are retracting the strong back now. The strong back is part of the transporter erector, which was used not only to roll Falcon 9 out to the launch pad, but also to raise it into its vertical position. It will retract just about 2 degrees first after those clamp arms open up around the base of Dragon's trunk, and then just before liftoff, we'll actually go all the way back to 45 degrees retracted to give Falcon 9 and Crew-7 room for liftoff.
Now under 4 minutes until launch. Next up, we're looking for the first stage liquid oxygen loading to finish at T-minus 3 minutes. You're starting to see some white clouds on your screen. That is vapor, it's normal. We'll continue to see that build up as we get closer to launch. Obviously, this liquid oxygen that we're loading is super chilled, so a little bit of that will boil off in the hot Florida air.
Stage 1 LOX loading is complete.
Great view of Crew-7 there inside of the Dragon spacecraft, awaiting liftoff just under 3 minutes from now.
Dragon is in terminal count.
Now about 2 minutes and 30 seconds until launch. Next milestone, we're looking up for stage 2 LOX load to complete. Additionally, shortly after that, we'll hear gas closeout begin, isolating the feed lines from the different gas systems for the Falcon 9 rocket. Those will get vented overboard through the umbilicals and the strong back itself.
Stage 2 LOX loading is complete. Dragon is in auto idle.
Confirmation that stage 2 LOX load is complete. Dragon and Falcon 9 fully fueled.
Gas closeout has started. Expect loud venting.
There's the gas closeout call that we expected. Additionally, we will be in auto idle. This puts the rocket in a state the flight computers understand before it takes over, making sure the transition to final countdown is smooth. Coming up at T-minus 1 minute, we'll hear that Dragon is in countdown. Its computer will switch to countdown mode. We'll also hear that the flight termination system on Falcon 9 is armed.
Falcon 9 is in startup. Dragon's in terminal count.
Dragon's flight computer in countdown and configured for launch, and the flight termination system now armed. Less than a minute until liftoff today.
Dragon, SpaceX,
this flight termination
go for launch.
system
Dragon Cappies go for launch.
You heard it, Crew-7 getting the go for launch, just
T-minus
30
30
seconds
seconds.
away for an on-time launch. At the time of liftoff today, the space station will be flying 260 miles over southeastern Iraq.
T-minus 15. K-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engine full power. And liftoff. Go Falcon, go Dragon, go Crew-7.
Endurance ascends, an international
Copy,
crew
1 Alpha.
destined for the International Space Station.
Stage 1
That's
propulsion is
1.7
nominal.
million. Good calls from the propulsion officers here. Propulsion's nominal. 1.7 million pounds of thrust on Falcon 9, taking Crew-7 to the International Space Station, now traveling almost 300 miles per hour.
Nominal power and telemetry.
We are just about T
Stage 1
plus
throttle down.
45 seconds into the 7th rotational crew mission on board Dragon and Falcon 9. And right now the vehicle is...
Greetings from the SPX stage. It's a pleasure to stand before you, not just as an explorer of space, but as a bearer of exciting news that transcends the celestial